My name is Nora, and though I escaped the basement where my father, Vincent, imprisoned me for 12 years, the scars he left run deeper than the concrete walls that held me. Years after Ivy's courage set me free, I've chosen to face him, not with violence, but with a calculated plan to expose his lies and reclaim the justice I was denied. A reckoning that unfolds with every step I take in the light. This is the story of my revenge, woven with vivid details, suspense, and a lingering resonance. A journey not of hatred, but of truth, driven by the need to ensure Vincent's darkness can never hide again. I thought freedom would erase him. I thought the open sky above Willow Creek, the gentle babble of the stream outside my apartment, would wash Vincent from my soul. But he lingered, a shadow in every quiet moment, his voice haunting my dreams. "It's just us now, Nora." I'd wake, heart pounding, my fingers brushing the rusty nail I'd kept from the basement, now tucked in a small wooden box in my dresser drawer. Its sharp edge was a reminder of the girl who survived, the girl who scratched lines into concrete walls to claim her days. I'd built a life, my cozy apartment with its watercolor paintings, my job at the bakery kneading dough, my evenings by the stream. But peace was fragile, shattered by the knowledge that Vincent was out there, released after 7 years in prison, his sentence reduced for good behavior. Good behavior. The phrase was a blade, slicing through the fragile calm I'd fought to build. He'd taken my childhood, my mother's memory, my sense of safety, and now he was free, while I still carried the basement's weight in every breath. The news of his release came in a plain envelope from the Pine Hollow Courthouse, its official seal stark against the white paper. I found it in my mailbox on a crisp autumn morning, the air smelling of fallen leaves and wood smoke. "Vincent Caldwell has been released on parole," the letter read, followed by an address in Ashwood, a small town 2 hours away, where he now lived in a halfway house. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands, my coffee growing cold in its chipped blue mug. His face flooded my mind. Those dark, searching eyes, that gray wool coat reeking of cheap tobacco, and a rage I'd buried for years surged, hot and raw. He'd stolen 12 years, locked me in a tomb of lies, and now he was walking free, while I still flinched at the sound of heavy footsteps or the scrape of a key in a lock. I couldn't let him slip away, not without facing what he'd done, not without the world seeing the monster behind his mask. Revenge, I decided, wasn't a scream or a fist. It was a plan, meticulous and deliberate, like the scratches I'd etched into the basement walls to mark time. I wouldn't confront him in a burst of anger. That was too fleeting, too easily dismissed. I wanted him to feel the exposure, the vulnerability he'd forced on me for years. I wanted the world to know him, not as the reformed man the parole board believed, but as the liar who'd caged his own daughter, who'd likely taken my mother's life before mine. I wanted justice, not just for the girl I was, whispering prayers into a tattered bear, but for the woman I'd become, standing in the light, refusing to be silenced. I began quietly, piecing together the fragments of Vincent's life, the truths he'd buried. I drove to Pine Hollow, the town I'd fled, its streets lined with maple trees now ablaze with red and gold. The old house still stood, a decaying relic with boarded windows and peeling paint, like a corpse left to rot. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. The thought of those creaking stairs, that iron door, made my stomach churn, my palms sweat. Instead, I parked across the street, staring at the overgrown yard where I'd once chased butterflies, now choked with weeds and rusted garden tools. The memories were sharp, my mother's laugh, her red scrunchie bright against her golden hair, but they were tainted by Vincent's shadow, his lies that had isolated us even before the basement. I headed to the Pine Hollow Library, a squat brick building with creaky floors and the faint smell of old paper. The librarian, Mrs. Elaine, a woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a kind but guarded smile, seemed to recognize me, though she didn't say so. Her eyes softened as she handed me a stack of microfiche reels, newspaper archives from the years before and after my captivity. "Take your time, dear," she said, her voice gentle, and I wondered if she carried the same guilt I'd seen in others, the guilt of not noticing a girl vanishing from their midst. I spent hours in a dim cubicle, the microfiche machine humming as I scrolled through grainy headlines. There were articles about my disappearance, local girl missing, family devastated, with a photo of me at 9, gap-toothed and smiling, clutching my green bear. Later, there were stories about Vincent's arrest. Pine Hollow man charged with kidnapping own daughter. The words were clinical, detached, but they didn't capture the weight of the basement, the smell of mold, the static of that broken radio. There were gaps, questions the papers never answered. Why had no one checked on me? Where was my mother when Vincent locked me away? I found her obituary, a single paragraph from when I was 8. Margaret Caldwell, 32, passed away unexpectedly. No cause of death, no details, just a void that screamed of secrets. The vagueness was a splinter under my skin, urging me to dig deeper. I tracked down old neighbors, people who'd known Vincent before he became the monster of my nightmares. Mrs. Larson, a retired teacher who'd lived across the street, welcomed me into her cluttered living room, where doilies covered every surface and a tabby cat named Tinkerbell eyed me from the couch. She poured tea, her hands trembling slightly, and spoke in a hushed tone. "Vincent was always off," she said, stirring sugar into her cup. "Quiet, but not the good kind. After Margaret died, he shut down, stopped talking, kept the curtains drawn, let the yard go to ruin." She paused, her eyes flickering with guilt, her fingers tightening around the spoon. "I should have checked on you, Nora. I thought you were with relatives, maybe an aunt. I'm so sorry." Her apology stung, a reminder of how Vincent's lies had woven a net around me, convincing the world I was safe when I was starving in the dark. But her words also fueled me, sharpening my resolve. I asked about my mother, hoping for a clue to her sudden absence. Mrs. Larson's face clouded, her spoon clinking against the cup. Margaret was bright, always humming some tune, always smiling, but after marrying Vincent, she changed. Got quiet, nervous, like she was walking on eggshells. I saw bruises once, on her wrist, faint but there. She said she'd bumped into a door, but I didn't believe her. My heart sank, a new piece of the puzzle snapping into place with a sickening click. Vincent's cruelty hadn't started with me. It had claimed my mother first, her red scrunchie and her songs silenced long before I was locked away. I visited others, a retired postman who'd delivered our mail, a mechanic who'd fixed Vincent's truck. Their stories were similar. Vincent was distant, volatile, a man who'd snap over small things, like a late delivery or a wrong part. The postman, Mr. Hayes, leaned back in his rocking chair on his porch, his eyes distant. He'd stand in his driveway at night, just staring at the sky, muttering to himself. Once, I heard him shouting inside the house, "Before you were gone, your mom was crying. I should have done something." His regret mirrored Mrs. Larson's, a chorus of missed chances that let Vincent's darkness grow unchecked. Ivy was the first person I confided in about my plan, though I hesitated, not wanting to pull her back into my shadows. She was 16 now, her ponytail replaced by a messy bun, her yellow t-shirt traded for a denim jacket, but her eyes still held that fearless spark that had saved me. We met at a cafe in Willow Creek, the air thick with the scent of espresso and warm cinnamon rolls. I stirred my tea, the spoon clinking softly, and spoke in a low voice. I want Vincent to face what he did, Ivy. Not just to me, but to my mom, to everyone he hurt. I want the world to see him for what he is. Ivy leaned forward, her brow furrowed, her coffee untouched. You're not gonna do anything crazy, right? Like, you're not gonna hurt him? Her worry warmed me, a reminder of the girl who'd risked everything to free me. She was still my protector, even now, her courage a light I could lean into. No, I said, my voice steady. I'm going to expose him, make sure he can't hide behind lies anymore. I outlined my idea, a public reckoning, a way to strip away Vincent's facade. I'd gather evidence, documents, testimonies, my own story, and share it, not just with the courts, but with the world. A book, perhaps, or a series of articles, something that would outlive me, a permanent mark against his name. I wanted his redemption to crumble, his freedom to feel like the cage he'd built for me. Ivy's eyes lit up, her jaw set. I'm in. Whatever you need, Nora. Research, sneaking around, hacking into stuff. Well, not hacking, but, digging. I laughed, the sound easing the tension in my chest. She was still the ninja who'd stolen the key, ready to dive into danger for me, her bravery a fire that never dimmed. With Ivy's help, I became a detective of my own past, unearthing truths buried in dust and denial. Ivy was a wizard with computers, her fingers flying over her laptop as she dug through online archives, public records, and forgotten corners of the internet. She found court documents from Vincent's trial, buried in a county database that hinted at more than just my kidnapping. There were vague references to prior incidents, domestic disputes that were never pursued, brushed off as family matters. Ivy also stumbled across a blog, abandoned years ago, written by a Pine Hollow resident named Clara, who'd lived a block from our house. Vincent Caldwell gave me the creeps, Clara wrote. He'd sit on his porch at night staring at nothing, chain smoking. Once, I saw him burn a pile of clothes in the backyard. Women's clothes, dresses, a scarf. It was after his wife died. I told the police, but they said it wasn't evidence of anything. The image haunted me. My mother's red scrunchie, her sundresses, reduced to ash in a midnight fire. I began to suspect Vincent's lies went deeper than the basement, that my mother's unexpected death was no accident. I hired a private investigator, Carl, a gruff man with a gravelly voice and a penchant for black coffee. I paid him with every cent I'd saved from the bakery, each dollar a step toward answers. Carl tracked down hospital records from the year my mother died, buried in a county archive in a dusty filing cabinet. The report listed blunt force trauma as the cause, ruled an accident. She'd supposedly fallen down the stairs at home. But Carl's voice was grim when he called me from his office. The coroner's notes mention inconsistencies, bruises on her arms, her neck. That didn't match a fall. No investigation followed. Vincent was never questioned. Small towns, people don't like to stir up trouble. The truth landed like a stone in my chest. Vincent had likely killed her, and no one had cared enough to ask why. I sat by the stream that night, the water's babble drowned out by the roar of my thoughts. My mother hadn't left me. She'd been taken, her song silenced, her red scrunchie burned. The rage I'd buried surged, but I didn't let it consume me. I sharpened it, molded it into focus, a tool as precise as the nail I'd hidden in my bear. Vincent would answer for her, for me, for every moment he'd stolen. My plan took shape over months, each step a stone laid in a path toward justice. I gathered testimonies, spending evenings in Pine Hollow and neighboring towns, knocking on doors, sitting in kitchens and living rooms that smelled of coffee and old wood. Mrs. Larson's story was joined by others. Mr. Hayes, the postman, who'd heard my mother crying through the walls. Mrs. Carter, a former co-worker of Vincent's at the lumber yard, who'd seen him smash a glass during an argument over a late shipment, his face like a storm about to break. Each story was a thread, weaving a tapestry of Vincent's darkness, a portrait no parole board could ignore. Ivy and I compiled documents: the hospital report with its damning coroner's notes, trial records with their hints of prior violence, my own account of the basement years, written in long, raw sessions that left me drained, but resolute. I typed late into the night, my laptop's glow the only light in my apartment, describing the moldy air, the static-filled radio, the fear that clung to me like damp cloth. Ivy organized it all, creating digital folders labeled evidence, testimonies, timeline, her efficiency a counterpoint to my emotional churn. She also found photos, grainy images from old newspaper clippings, Vincent's mugshot, a candid of my mother at a town picnic, her smile bright but her eyes distant. We printed them, building a dossier that felt like a weapon, heavy with truth. I decided on a public forum for the reckoning, a stage where Vincent's lies would unravel before an audience. Ashwood, where he now lived, hosted an annual Second Chances Fair, a community event for ex-convicts to share stories of redemption, their voices amplified by hope and applause. Vincent was scheduled to speak, his parole officer touting him as a model of reform, a man who'd found faith in prison. The irony was bitter, a sour taste in my mouth, but it was the perfect opportunity. I'd confront him there, not with violence, but with evidence, letting his facade crumble under the weight of my words and the documents we'd gathered. Ivy insisted on coming, her voice firm over the phone. "He can't hurt us anymore, Nora, and I'm not letting you face him alone." I worried for her, the same fear I'd felt when she'd planned to steal the key years ago, but I couldn't deny her. She was part of this, my partner in truth. We drove to Ashwood the day before, staying in a motel with a flickering neon sign and walls so thin I could hear the couple next door arguing. I barely slept, my mind replaying every moment in the basement. The hunger, the cold, Vincent's hands in my hair. The rusty nail sat in my pocket, not as a weapon, but as a talisman, its weight grounding me, reminding me of the girl who'd survived. The fair was held in Ashwood's Community Center, a low brick building strung with banners proclaiming "New Beginnings" in bold blue letters. The room was packed, the air thick with the smell Jimmy Choo's, coffee, and nervous chatter. Folding chairs were arranged in neat rows, filled with locals, parole officers, and a few reporters scribbling in notebooks. Vincent stood at the front, thinner now, his gray coat replaced by a cheap navy blazer, but his eyes were the same, dark, unreadable, darting like a cornered animal's. He spoke of mistakes and finding faith, his voice smooth, practiced, each word a polished lie. The audience nodded, some clapping, their faces soft with sympathy. I felt sick, my hands clenching the folder of documents in my lap, its weight a promise of truth. When the moderator, a stout woman with a clipboard and a tight smile, opened the floor for questions, I stood, my legs steady despite the tremor in my chest. Ivy squeezed my hand, her warmth a quiet anchor. "My name is Nora Caldwell," I said, my voice clear, cutting through the room's hum like a blade. Vincent's head snapped up, his face paling, his hands gripping the podium. "I'm your daughter, and I have a story to tell." The room fell silent, every eye on me, the air heavy with shock. I held up the folder, my voice unwavering, though my heart pounded. For 12 years, this man locked me in a basement, told me the world was dead. He stole my life, my mother's life. He's no redeemed man. He's a liar, a manipulator, and I have proof. I opened the folder, reading excerpts. My mother's hospital report with its chilling inconsistencies, Mrs. Larson's testimony of Vincent's isolation, My own account of the basement's horrors, each word a raw wound laid bare. I spoke of the static-filled radio, the moldy air, the fear that never left, my voice steady, each sentence a stone hurled at Vincent's carefully built facade. He tried to interrupt, his voice rising, shrill and desperate. "She's lying. She's unstable. She needs help." But the audience was shifting, murmurs spreading like ripples, eyes narrowing with doubt. Ivy stood beside me, passing out copies of the documents we'd compiled, photocopied pages of hospital records, trial transcripts, my written account, her movements quick and sure, her face set with determination. The moderator looked shaken, her clipboard forgotten, but she didn't stop me. Vincent's parole officer, seated in the front row, scribbled furiously, his face grim, his pen scratching like an accusation. I didn't look at Vincent as I finished, didn't give him the satisfaction of my gaze. I could feel his panic, the unraveling of his lies, a cage of his own making. "You took everything," I said, my voice low but carrying, filling the room. "My childhood, my mother, my trust. But you don't get to take my truth." I sat down, my hands trembling, my breath shallow, but Ivy's arm was around my shoulders, her presence a shield, a reminder that I wasn't alone. The aftermath was a storm, chaotic and unrelenting. The local paper, the Ashwood Gazette, ran a front-page story the next day. Ex-convict's dark past exposed at Redemption Fair, with a photo of Vincent, his face ashen, being led from the community center. The story spread online, shared across platforms I'd never heard of, hashtags like Number Justice for Nora trending for days. Reporters called, their voicemails piling up on my phone. But I didn't answer. I'd said what I needed to say. Vincent's parole was revoked within a week, pending a new investigation spurred by the documents we'd uncovered, especially the questions about my mother's death. Carl, the investigator, kept me updated, his voice gruff but kind over the phone. "They're looking at manslaughter charges for your mom, maybe more. The coroner's report is under review, and they're digging into old police records. You did good, kid, real good." I didn't feel triumphant. Justice wasn't a burst of light or a swelling soundtrack. It was a slow, heavy thing, like the stream carving its path through stone, patient and unyielding. But it was enough. Vincent's name was no longer whispered as a tale of redemption. It was a warning, a truth etched into the world's memory, a stain he couldn't wash away. The halfway house in Ashwood evicted him, and he was sent back to a cell, his second chance reduced to ashes, like the clothes he'd burned years ago. I returned to Willow Creek, to the quiet rhythm of my life, but I was changed, lighter somehow, as if I'd shed a weight I hadn't known I carried. I painted again, spending evenings in my apartment, the scent of turpentine mixing with the stream's fresh air through the open window. I created a new piece, a girl by a stream, holding a green bear, a red scrunchie in her hair, the water reflecting a sky full of stars. It was for my mother, for the years we lost, for the truth we reclaimed together. Ivy framed it, hanging it above my couch, her grin wide as she stepped back to admire it. "You're a badass, Nora," she said, her voice teasing but proud, and I laughed, the sound bright and unburdened, a note I hadn't heard in my own voice before. Ivy visited often, her weekend trips from Pine Hollow, a highlight of my weeks. She'd bound into my apartment, her messy bun bouncing, her laugh filling the small space like sunlight. She'd talk about her science fair projects, a model rocket that actually launched, her new mountain bike, the way Puffy chased a moth and fell off the couch, her stories a tapestry of a life unshadowed by fear. We'd bake together, strawberry scones her favorite, the kitchen warm with the scent of butter and sugar. We'd sit by the stream, tossing pebbles into the water, watching the ripples spread. their patterns a quiet promise of change. "You're gonna be okay, Nora," she said once, her voice matter of fact, as if it were the simplest truth in the world. I believed her, the words settling into me like roots, grounding me in a future I could shape. I didn't think of Vincent often, though he lingered in the corners of my mind, a ghost I no longer feared. The nightmares came less frequently, the basement's iron door fading into a distant memory, its power broken by the light I'd claimed. I focused on the present, on the bakery's morning rush, the chatter of customers, the feel of dough under my palms. I painted more, my watercolors growing bolder, capturing the hills beyond Willow Creek, the stream's shimmer, the sky's endless blue. Each brushstroke was a reclamation, a way to make the world mine again, to fill it with color where there'd once been gray. I started writing too, not just for the reckoning, but for myself. I kept a journal, its pages filled with small moments. The taste of fresh coffee, the sound of Ivy's laugh, the way the stream caught the sunrise. I wrote about the basement, but also about the escape, the strength I'd found, the truth I'd spoken. It wasn't for publication, not yet. It was for me, a way to map my own story, to see how far I'd come. Maybe one day I'd share it, turn it into the book I'd imagined, but for now it was enough to write, to let the words flow like the stream, steady and free. Vincent is gone from my life, locked away again, his fate no longer my burden. My days are filled with the bakery's warmth, the stream's song, the brushstrokes of my paintings, the laughter of Ivy's visits. I've lost so much, years, innocence, my mother's voice, but I've gained more. Truth, strength, a future I choose. I'm learning to dream again, to imagine a life beyond Willow Creek, maybe traveling to see the ocean, its waves a new kind of freedom, or learning the guitar I bought at a flea market, its strings waiting for my fingers. Every sunrise, I stand by my window, the sky painted in pinks and golds, and I breathe in the light, knowing this is my reckoning, my victory, my life. It's the gift Ivy gave me, the gift I give myself, a light that burns brighter than any darkness, a truth that will never be caged again.